Before the Great Fire by Mariah Hopkins. It was a pleasure to burn, the hired pipsqueaks who started the fire promised. A troop of boys so young they only had whispers of beard hair on their chins. They'd sprinted through the dark country hills to deliver word of their deed before we could even feel the heat of the blaze on our skin. Restless, we looked over the leafy gardens and cool pools of Caesar's provincial estate towards the black slopes where we knew Rome was fixed. The fire was still a light among lights, easily mistaken for any low star in the night or lighthouse glowing warm for pulling sailors ashore. How long before the flames swelled large in the far-off hills? How long before smoke blacker than black boiled skyward to obliterate the soft darkness of our summer evening? We tittered amongst ourselves. The wine cups weighed heavy in our hands, and all eyes moved slowly to Caesar Nero, belly up and looking like a beach jellyfish on his dining couch. He contemplated the boys over the mound of his stomach. Drink marred his pretty face with oily fatigue. Caesar clapped a hand against Poppaea's white leg, pushing on his wife's knee to raise himself upright. The arrangement was carried out as described, I hope, Caesar snoozed, the freedman Sporus passing another drink into his hand. The leader of the pipsqueaks stepped forward, and we drank him up and down. He and his cohort were not what we were expecting of people bitter enough to kindle city-swallowing flames all over Rome. They were not street filth tantalized with coins and hot meals to do the emperor's bidding, but clean young men. All were healthy-skinned, bright-eyed, and spry with strong legs and expectant lips. They could have been our sons, nephews, or cousins. The leader was a beautiful Roman son, golden-haired, and the closest to receiving his manly toga. Heaps of dry parchment were set aflame in spots around the circus, Caesar, the leader said. We shivered at his voice, slick and confident. The purpose of Caesar's scheme was inherently good, good enough that we could press those who would be hurt by it to the back of our minds to be forgotten. But it was wicked for a child to not be troubled at all by his role in the misery. Heaps, Poppaea repeated, snarling. Our heads snapped away from the child to her. The Empress's cheeks were blooming red. You were told not to leave any evidence of dirty work behind. Poppaea bristled, her towering wig of blonde curls trembling on top of her head. The leader opened his mouth to speak, but buttoned his lips together quickly. Caesar touched his wife's shoulder. Come, darling, the parchment will burn, he said to her. Won't it, boy? The boy leader nodded vigorously. All the Kylean was burning by the time we left the city. Pity the flame is so small, Poppaea sneered, gesturing to the tiny fluttering light in the hills that was Rome. Caesar touched her shoulder again. Would you have the blaze reach Antium, love? Poppaea shifted uncomfortably in her seat, silent but not placated. Caesar swung his right arm open, whole body swaying with him. Epaphroditus will pay your coin, he said, the boys following Caesar's direction towards his secretary. The dining patio was silent while the freedmen doled out the pipsqueaks' money, the shlink, shlink, shlink of coins sliding against coins, sounding in place of music. Impatient, Poppaea twirled her hand in the air, and the band started to play again. Sleepy themselves, the musicians strung out a song that was low and long, like an animal's bleat. Caesar lay down again, his wife's hand curling around his face as the music lulled him to sleep. We watched the boys skip away, purses jingling happily with new coin. Caesar, some of us tilted our chins into our palms and fell asleep. Others trained their eyes back on the growing glint of light in the hills, unsure of what we were waiting for, but aware that the rest of the evening rested on it. We were all brought to this dinner for one reason or another. Caesar considered us friends. We were distant cousins. On his father's side, we were political confidants or artists he held dear. And whether we were all informed of Caesar's plan to sweep into a fire-ravaged Rome as a savior bringing alms of water of corn or not, we were all pulled to Antium by the same fear of Caesar's fickleness. The boy who'd 10 years ago come to the laurels with virtue and promise was gone, replaced by a capricious man cruel enough to cast his mother off into the mouth of the sea. An ignored invitation could be seen as treachery, and after the death of the Lady Agrippina, there'd be no hesitation to lash at faithless friends, cousins, and confidants. We were drawn away from Rome with the promise that our homes would not be damaged. How could they be when the fire would be concentrated in poor areas? Areas where the people already had nothing, and Caesar's rescue would be seen as more than it was. Yet we could not help but think about what we left behind in the city. Not only the apartment buildings we owned and our homes with family treasures inside, but the tiny restaurant by the circus we enjoyed, the manuscripts we'd left in the hands of copiers, the bronze statue by which we used to play as children, and the friends, parents, and siblings we could not mourn. We stared at that flickering light in the dark countryside for longer than the musicians could play, Caesar's secretary approaching them to say it was all right if they wished to retire. Those of us who were still awake slowly began to let our heads droop. Whatever we were waiting for had not yet arrived, but we knew it had when we woke in the morning to an orange-tinged sky and the faint whiff of smoke. We touched our heads, groggy and displeased by the nature of our wake-up call. Caesar was as wobbly as the rest of us, but Poppaea was awake and standing, arms crossed over front, stained by a dribble of vomit, as she spoke in hushed tones to old Epaphroditus. Poppaea's curly wig dangled from her hand, and, noticing her waking guests, she slapped it back on top of her head. It rested there lopsided and in need of some tending. We turned our heads towards the hills, no longer swathed in dark night and lush with the light of day. Fire ran along the rim of the hills in orderly lines, silent and harmless from so far away, but close enough that a hint of hot smoke was in the air. Now that the fire was finally here, we were uncertain of what to do. We rose from our seats and gathered at the edge of the patio, staring at it, talking amongst ourselves, sharing our disbelief. Last night, the lot of us were so taken by the wine that the fire, Nero's plan, felt like a matter of course. Turn Rome into an inferno, save the citizens from the devastation, and look like a hero. But in the morning hours, it was hard to believe that it was real. Drunken schemes like this should never come to be. Poppaea's clapping hands brought us to attention. We drifted away from the patio ledge and reassembled around her. Caesar was standing beside her now, still groggy but alert. "Friends," Poppaea said, beckoning the last of us closer. "As you've seen, the fire has grown in Rome. Messengers tell us that the flames have crept through the streets, destroyed buildings. Looters are breaking into homes and businesses." Some of us clapped, unsure of how to take this news. It's what we were waiting for, but we couldn't help thinking about the businesses we owned and how much money Caesar's scheme would cost us. "This is what we intended," Poppaea said. She addressed the confused applause with her arms spread wide, palms up. The looting and destruction were things of benevolence. Soon Caesar will return to Rome, ready to aid recovery efforts with coin, food, water, and clothes. This statement definitely called for applause. All of us clapped, and some thrust cups into the air. "Caesar, savior of Rome!" they shouted. Caesar blinking in response. The full weight of what was happening had not yet hit him. "In 4 days we will leave for Rome," Poppaea continued. The cups in the air wilted. 4 days? Why not now? Antium was not so far away. Caesar could be in Rome this afternoon if he wished it. We looked at one another, clueless dolts searching for answers. Did Caesar mean to cause the most destruction possible before taking action? We turned our eyes towards the Emperor, swaying on spindly legs and rubbing his eyes. No, Caesar did not mean to destroy the city, but Poppaea did. Our stomachs churned as the air sickened with more smoke. It felt obvious, and we were fools for missing it. The Empress did not come by her position honestly, seducing Caesar and persuading him to divorce his first wife in favor of her. The head of Poppaea's rival was brought to her while she bathed, proof of her death. Rumors even existed that Poppaea was the one who organized Caesar's mother's death, since she didn't like the influence mother held over her son. The collapsing boat and death at sea seemed too absurd to be believed until we felt the fire reach out to us, tickle our backs and bare arms with a dull lick of heat. Poppaea couldn't entirely ensure her safety as empress if her husband was acting erratically, turning himself into a fool for even the lowest laundrywoman to see with his public poetry recitals. After everything she'd done to become his wife, organizing a great disaster to turn her husband into a hero of the people wasn't beyond Poppaea's capabilities. "Uncertainty and fear will live in Rome no more," Poppaea continued, taking hold of her husband's shoulder and steadying him. "After the fire, the people will see Caesar Nero as the noble man we, his closest friends and family, know him to be." Caesar patted Poppaea's hand with his fingers. "And artist," she added hastily. "They will finally know him as the true man and artist he is. Until then, we'll wait here," Poppaea said, trying to silence the doubts we were whispering to one another as her hair wiggled about on her head. "We'll wait in Antium until the fire is quenched, and Caesar can travel without fear of the fire. He'll be a hero when we reach the city."